Okay, so just to go over a little bit that's in the textbook, remember you should read this chapter on your own. I'm just highlighting important parts for you. So yeah, let's just get to it. The final proposal, and I'm just kind of going over the areas that I highlighted, but it's a final draft of the the project that you've been working on all semester, and it must adhere to a specific format. So if you watch my other video, you'll see a lot of how that format sort of shifts and further develops into a longer paper from your midterm. The heart of the proposal is the problem, the paradigm, and the plan that would work together to create a unified concept. This paradigm should grow organically out of the way that you define the problem. And the plan that you present should be clearly rationalized by the paradigm. So you can really start to see, especially at this point in the class and at this point in the paper, how they're all really interconnected, those P's. It is a 15 to 20 page paper. It is single spaced. Your references page is the only section that should be double spaced and keeping with the standards of APA formatting. You should make sure that you are striving for a professional and consistent tone throughout. Your pages must be numbered. Some of the page numbering is a little tricky. You have a little bit that's, some gets no page numbers, and then some gets Roman numerals, and then some just get our traditional numbers. So just make sure that that's done correctly. You should make sure that you are also utilizing headings and subheadings to help guide your reader. Sometimes using a bulleted list might be helpful. Anytime that you can do something like that, just to help with the fluidity or ease of reading and digesting that information, you should consider it. Label and number all of your graphs and figures. There should be a unifying typography style. You want to make sure that your writing is polished and that you are writing with emphasis and also with style in mind. And of course, it should be proofread. You will be peer editing, so nothing to worry about there. Here are the 13 parts of the proposal. The only part that is optional is part 13, which is an appendix. I'll go over that a little later. You can absolutely go through these if you'd like. I'm just going to highlight a couple of important details from each section. So your cover letter is a page in length, and its purpose is to help introduce and interpret the attached paper that you are writing. So you should be explaining why the reader has received the proposal. Try to persuade them to examine it closely. A lot of students will add a statistic or two to try to grab the attention of their patron. It should detail the content of the paper, and it should also be in full block style. It's really very similarly structured to the cover letter that you wrote for the job search assignment. Here are just some important components in terms of structural components that you need to include, so you can just make sure that you are doing that. I always tell students to begin by reminding them that, thank you so much for attending my oral presentation on April 12th. This is the longer version of my proposal where you can find all of the details and then just sort of go into it. You can highlight what the problem is, what the paradigm and plan are, why this is a proposal that they should really care about, why it aligns with their interests, things like that. Your final paragraph should invite them for further contact. So, of course, thank them for their time, but make sure that you offer them your phone number as well as your email address. And then, like always, just sign off with sincerely. But just a quick tidbit too, the body of this cover letter really should be an overview of your project. You do want to give them some details so they know what's coming. All right, going on, the title page. This is very easy. It should not take you long. Still counts as a page. Cover letter does not get a page number, neither does your title page. So it should include your project title. It should include who it's submitted by, who it's submitted to, and the date. Some students like to include an image or some sort of a picture. That's also fine as long as it's cited. You can look at the exemplars in this textbook as well as the one that I posted just for some guidance there. But this is very self-explanatory. Going on to the abstract, it's something that should be labeled abstract. This is the first section that will get a page number. It should get a lowercase Roman numeral. one, and it should be 1 to 2 paragraphs in length. It's about 150 to 300 words. You are covering the problem, the paradigm, and the plan. You are not writing persuasively, and you are writing from a disinterested perspective. The whole goal is just to very briefly educate whoever's reading it about what the proposal's purpose is, so that a secretary or someone who receives it could properly file it or put it on the proper person's desk. So just make sure that you are looking at some of those examples in the book, but this is a very easy section to write. The next section is your table of contents. This should also have a lowercase Roman numeral, and your table of figures. They kind of go together. If your table of contents is not a full page, sometimes you can put your table of figures on the same page. If your table of contents is extremely involved and very long, you might have to start that table of figures on a fresh page. So there's just some directions here, but this one's pretty self-explanatory as well. Going on to the introduction, there are two main purposes for the introduction. One is to present information about the problem that you are addressing, and two is to forecast your overall argument. You should be focusing on quantifying and defining that problem for your patron, and you should also be giving a ton of information about your population and why they are in need. You've already done this for your midterm section, so you can absolutely use what you've submitted, but it should be revised and it should be expanded upon. Some of you do not have problem sections that are long enough or well developed enough. You might have a pretty decent start for what you submitted at the midterm level. You might just need to expand more. Going on to the literature review, this sounds new, but it's actually the same exact section as your paradigm. This is where all of your models of success and pieces of theory will go. You should be presenting, analyzing, and integrating your paradigm research here. You definitely want to try to open with some reference to the problem. And you should use titles and subtitles here to help go through this section thoroughly. One thing just to be mindful of here is that there are two parts that make this up. We already talked about this. We have theory and we have models of success. For each of your models, you really want to be thorough. You want to explain what was implemented, how was it implemented, what structures were put in place, how was it set up, and then you also want to add some information that's sort of your own, like how can you analyze the success of this program? Was there a way that they analyzed the success, and how is it going to work with your population? Is there anything that could have been better? So offering your own insight. You can read through the rest just for added detail. Going on to the plan should be as specific as possible. No one who submitted their midterm has a plan that's specific enough, and that's normal for the midterm level, but here's really where you need to think, what can I do to make a plan that's specific enough and that is directly developed from my paradigm section, that lit review section, so detailed that if I gave it to a random stranger, they would feel confident implementing this plan. So that's the level of detail that we are looking for. Going on to the budget, you need to list out everything that you are going to need, whether it's the salary of someone, supplies, anything that it costs to build or rent, whatever. You're going to put that in accountant's columns, and that can be in a table is perfectly fine. Some students also like to add a small written explanation, but at the very least you need accountant's columns. And then the last part is your discussion or evaluation plan. This is really where you wrap everything up and you're just kind of making your final persuasive pitch to your patron. If the results of your project can be tested for effectiveness, that's when you would include an evaluation plan. Not everyone will have one, but it is something to consider. You need your references page. You know all about that. If you have issues with structure, just reach out and let me know. A new thing here is that you will need visual aids and figures throughout the paper. Not until the intro section. That's the first section that you might have a figure. But you need at least 3 that are representations of numerical information. So things like graphs, tables, charts, or maps. And then you might have additional ones in addition to those 3, things like drawings or photographs or flowcharts, whatever is helpful in demonstrating that information. Most students have that in their intro section and their paradigm section, and sometimes their plan section. The appendix is optional, but it's any additional info that doesn't quite fit. So you can look into that if that's necessary. And just know that if you keep going, there are sample proposals that you can look through. At the very end of this chapter, there are also checklists for each of those sections for when you peer edit. All right, just let me know if you have any questions.